The Promise Under Foreign Stars captain Marcus Steele stood on the observation deck of the U.E.S. Defiance, watching the twin suns of Kepler 442 paint the sky in shades of amber and crimson. 3 years had passed since humanity's first contact with the Zephyrian Empire, and the memory of her still haunted his dreams. Velina, with her silver skin that shimmered like moonlight and eyes that held the depth of dying stars, had been the first alien he'd ever spoken to without weapons drawn. The war had ended 6 months ago, but the scars remained. Humanity had proven themselves against overwhelming odds, turning salvaged Zephyrian technology against their former oppressors. The galaxy had learned to fear human ingenuity, but Marcus remembered when he'd been just another grunt on a backwater colony. World farming moisture on Titan's edge. That's where he'd met her. Velina had crash-landed during a reconnaissance mission, her ship's engines failing in the planet's electromagnetic storms. Instead of capturing her, Marcus had made a choice that would change everything. He'd helped her repair her vessel, working through the night in his makeshift workshop. She'd been fascinated by human adaptability, watching him jury-rig solutions with spare parts and determination. "Your species creates miracles from nothing," she'd whispered in accented English, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "We Zephyrians perfect what already exists, but you make something from nothing." They'd spent 3 weeks together while her ship underwent repairs. Marcus taught her about human culture, sharing stories of Earth's wars and triumphs. She spoke of her home world, Zephyros Prime, where crystalline cities reached toward purple skies. Despite the war raging across the galaxy, they'd found peace in each other's company. The night before her departure, they'd stood under the alien constellations, and Marcus had made a promise that seemed impossible. "When this war ends," he'd sighed, "I'll find you. We'll build something together, a future where our species don't just coexist, but thrive." Velina had touched his face with her delicate fingers, leaving a faint luminescent mark that had faded within hours. "I will remember, Marcus Steele, and I will wait." But the war had escalated. Marcus had been drafted into the colonial defense force, his engineering skills making him valuable in the rapid development of new technologies. He'd helped design the plasma cannons that turned the tide at the Battle of Proxima, the shield generators that protected Earth during the Siege of Sol, and the faster-than-light communication arrays that coordinated humanity's greatest victories. Now, as captain of humanity's most advanced vessel, he wondered if his promise had been nothing more than a dream. The Zephyrian Empire had surrendered, their fleets scattered across the galaxy. Most humans wanted nothing more than to return to their pre-war lives, but Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something greater awaited among the stars. Echoes of war, the bridge of the Defiance, hummed with quiet efficiency as Marcus reviewed the latest intelligence reports. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, his chief engineer, approached with a datapad containing anomalous readings from the Outer Rim territories. "Captain, we're picking up some strange energy signatures near the Vega system," Morrison reported, his weathered face creased with concern. "The patterns don't match anything in our databases, but they're definitely artificial." Marcus studied the readings, his mind racing through possibilities. The war had left the galaxy scattered with abandoned technology, derelict ships, and forgotten outposts. Scavengers and pirates had made a living from the wreckage, but this was different. The energy signature was too organized, too purposeful. "Could be survivors," suggested Navigator Chun Wei, looking up from her star charts. Both sides left plenty of people stranded when the fleets pulled back. The thought gnawed at Marcus. During the war, humanity had learned to be ruthless when necessary, but they'd never lost their fundamental compassion. It was what separated them from the more militaristic species they'd encountered. While the Zephyrians had advanced technology and the Krillide Union had superior numbers, humans had something else entirely: the ability to adapt to care and to never give up on their own. "Set course for the Vita system," Marcus ordered. "Maximum. Safe speed." As the Defiance engaged its quantum drive, Marcus found himself thinking about the lessons learned during humanity's rapid ascension to galactic power. They'd started as a species confined to a single solar system, but necessity had driven innovation at an unprecedented pace. Human scientists had reverse-engineered alien technology, improved upon it, and created hybrid systems that surpassed the originals. The ship's AI, which Marcus had helped design, was a perfect example. Rather than copying alien computer systems, humanity had developed artificial intelligence that could think creatively, adapt to new situations, and even display intuition. It was this uniquely human approach to problem-solving that had turned a defensive war into a stunning victory. 3 days later, the Defiance dropped out of quantum space near a small moon orbiting Vega 7. The energy readings were stronger now, emanating from what appeared to be a research facility built into the moon's surface. Long-range scans revealed the distinctive architecture of Zephyrian construction, but modified with human engineering principles. "Life signs?" Marcus asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Confirmed," reported Science Officer Dr. Rebecca. "Hunt, small group, mixed species. The structure appears to be some kind of laboratory or workshop." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Mixed species meant collaboration, not conquest. It meant someone was trying to build bridges instead of walls. As they approached the facility, he couldn't help but wonder if this was the kind of future he'd envisioned during those quiet nights on Titan's Edge. The facility's communication array activated, broadcasting on multiple frequencies. When the universal translator processed the message, Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. The voice was familiar, even after all these years. "Human vessel, you are welcome here. This is Research Station Unity, a joint endeavor between our species. Please identify yourself." It wasn't Velina's voice, but it carried the same musical quality that had haunted his dreams. Marcus stepped forward, his hand steady despite the emotion, threatening to overwhelm him. "This is Captain Marcus Steele of the U.E.'s Defiance. We received your energy signature and came to investigate. What kind of research are you conducting?" The pause that followed seemed to stretch forever before the response came, tinged with something that might have been wonder. "Captain Steele? The Marcus Steele who served on Titan's Edge?" The station between stars, the docking bay of Research Station Unity, was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. Zephyrian crystal technology merged seamlessly with human metallurgy, creating a space that seemed to breathe with bioluminescent light. As the Defiance's shuttle touched down, Marcus felt a mixture of anticipation and trepidation that reminded him of his first combat mission. The airlock cycled open, revealing a figure that made his heart skip. She was taller than he remembered, her silver skin bearing new patterns that seemed to pulse with inner light. Velina had changed in the years since their parting, but her eyes still held that same depth that had captivated him on that distant colony world. "You kept your promise," she said simply, her voice carrying across the bay like a melody. "I always keep my promises," Marcus replied, stepping forward with the measured pace of a man trying not to run. "Though I didn't expect to find you in a place like this." Velina gestured to the facility around them, pride evident in her expression. "This is what we've built, Marcus. Not just Zephyrians and humans, but others as well. The war taught us all something important. Isolation breeds conflict, but cooperation creates miracles." As they walked through the station's corridors, Marcus marveled at the fusion of technologies and cultures. Human ingenuity had been combined with Zephyrian precision, Andromedan biotechnology, and even some systems he didn't recognize. Result was a facility that seemed to anticipate needs, adapt to circumstances, and evolve with its inhabitants. "We call it the Unity Project," explained Dr. Cale Thorne, a human xenobiologist who had joined them. When the war ended, a small group of us realized that the real victory wouldn't come from conquest or surrender, but from understanding. We're developing technologies that could revolutionize how species interact across the galaxy. They entered a vast laboratory where teams of mixed species researchers worked on projects that defied easy categorization. Marcus watched a human engineer collaborating with a Zephyrian mathematician to design what appeared to be a new type of space-time manipulation device. In another corner, an Andromedan biologist was teaching human medical students about cellular regeneration techniques. The applications are limitless, Velina explained, her excitement infectious. We've developed communication systems that translate not just language, but cultural context. Environmental adaptation technologies that could allow any species to thrive on any world. Even theoretical frameworks for faster-than-light travel that don't require the massive energy expenditures of current systems. Marcus felt a familiar, stirring in his chest, the same feeling he'd experienced when humanity first reached for the stars. This is incredible work, but it must be dangerous. There are plenty of people on all sides who wouldn't appreciate this kind of cooperation. Velina's expression darkened slightly. You're right. We've had to be careful, secretive even. Some of our own people consider us traitors, and there are human factions that still view any alien cooperation as weakness. That's why we need protection, added Dr. Thorne. We're at a critical juncture in our research. Within months, we could have breakthrough technologies that would benefit everyone, but only if we can continue our work undisturbed. Marcus understood immediately. The Unity project represented everything he'd hoped for when he'd made his promise to Velina, but it also represented a threat to those who profited from division and conflict. The galaxy was full of species and factions that had built their power on the premise that cooperation was impossible. What do you need? He asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Time, Velina said simply. And perhaps a guardian angel with a very large ship. Marcus looked around the laboratory, seeing not just the technology and the research, but the future itself. This was what humanity had always been capable of, taking the impossible and making it inevitable. The war had shown the galaxy that humans could fight, but this station proved they could do something far more important. They could hope. The test of Unity 2 weeks after the Defiance had taken up protective orbit around Research Station Unity. The first test came in the form of a Krillite battlecruiser, dropping out of hyperspace with weapons charged. The message that followed was brief and hostile. Surrender the station or face annihilation. Marcus stood on his bridge, watching the tactical display as his crew prepared for what could be their final battle. The Krillite vessel, the Bloodfang, was twice the size of the Defiance and armed with plasma cannons that could punch through their shields with a single sustained burst. Under normal circumstances, any reasonable captain would have ordered an immediate retreat, but these weren't normal circumstances. Captain, reported Chief Tactical Officer Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka, they're demanding we stand down and allow them to board the station. They claim the Unity project is developing weapons that threaten galactic security. Marcus almost smiled at the irony. The Unity project was indeed developing weapons, but they were weapons against ignorance, against the kind of thinking that led to wars like the one they'd just survived. The universal translator improvements alone would prevent countless conflicts born from misunderstanding. Open a channel, Marcus ordered, his voice steady despite the odds they faced. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the scarred face of War Master Kron, a Krillite warrior whose reputation for ruthlessness was known throughout the galaxy. His species resembled bipedal reptiles, with scales that could deflect most energy weapons, and claws capable of rending metal. Human captain, Kron growled, his translator rendering his words in harsh, clipped tones. You protect enemies of order. Stand aside, or be destroyed with them. War Master Kron, Marcus replied, clasping his hands behind his back in a gesture of calm authority. I'm protecting scientists and researchers, working to benefit all species. If that makes me an enemy of your particular brand of order, then so be it. Kron's eyes narrowed, and Marcus could see the calculation behind them. The Krellite Empire had been neutral during the human-Zephyrian War, but they'd been watching, learning, and clearly planning their own expansion into the power vacuum left by the conflict. You humans won your war through treachery and luck, Kron snarled. You will not find us so easily defeated. I'm not looking for a fight, Marcus said, and he meant it. But I'm not backing down either. The work being done here is too important. The channel closed, and Marcus turned to his crew. These were good people, trained professionals, who'd followed him through the darkest days of the war. They deserved better than to die for a research station they'd only known for 2 weeks. But he could see in their faces that they understood what was at stake. All hands, battle stations, he announced over the ship's intercom. We're about to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten hope itself. The battle that followed would later be studied in military academies across human space. The Defiance, outgunned and outmanned, used every trick in the human playbook. Rapid course changes that utilized the ship's superior maneuverability, targeted strikes that exploited no weaknesses in Krellite design, and most importantly, the kind of creative thinking that had made humanity a galactic power. When the Bloodfang's shields went down, it wasn't due to superior firepower, but because Chief Engineer Morrison had jury-rigged a feedback pulse using the station's research equipment. When their engines failed, it was because Navigator Chun had calculated a gravity-assisted trajectory that put them in exactly the right position to exploit the local star's magnetic field. But the real victory came when reinforcements arrived. Not human ships, but a mixed fleet of vessels from a dozen different species, all of them defending the Unity project. The galaxy had been watching, and they'd made their choice. War Master. Kron's final transmission was grudging, but clear. You have shown us something new, humans. Perhaps there is wisdom in your madness. As the Krellite vessel limped away, Marcus allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. They'd won more than just a battle. They'd proven that the future didn't have to be built on the foundations of the past. A future we choose 6 months later. Research Station Unity had grown into something unrecognizable from its humble beginnings. What had started as a small facility had evolved into a sprawling complex that housed representatives from over 30 different species, all working toward a common goal. A galaxy where cooperation wasn't just possible, but inevitable. Marcus stood in the station's new command center, watching as the latest group of arrivals docked at the expanded ports. These weren't researchers or scientists, but diplomats and leaders from across the galaxy, drawn by the promise of the Unity Project's latest breakthrough, a universal empathy enhancer that allowed different species to literally feel each other's emotions. It's working better than we ever imagined, Velina said, joining him at the observation window. She wore a new uniform that bore the insignia of the Unity Project, a simple design that somehow managed to represent hope without favoritism toward any one species. The Andromedan delegation tested the empathy enhancer yesterday, she continued. For the first time in their history, they understood what fear actually feels like. It's changing how they approach interspecies relations entirely. Marcus nodded, but his attention was focused on something else. The construction crews working on the station's newest addition. The shipyard would be capable of building vessels that incorporated the best technology from every member species, creating a new generation of ships designed for exploration rather than conquest. The Council of Worlds wants to officially recognize the Unity Project as a neutral zone, Velina added. They're offering us full diplomatic protection and unlimited funding. And what's the catch? Marcus asked, because there was always a catch. They want us to share everything, every breakthrough, every innovation, every advancement. No secrets, no proprietary technology, no advantages for any one species. Marcus considered this. It was what they'd always intended, but making it official would change everything. The Unity Project would become more than just a research station. It would become the foundation for a new kind of galactic civilization. What do you think? He asked, though he suspected he already knew her answer. I think, Belina said, her voice carrying that same musical quality that had captivated him years ago, that some promises are worth keeping, even when they become bigger than we ever imagined. That evening, as the twin suns of Kepler 442 set, behind the station's growing silhouette, Marcus found himself thinking about the journey that had brought them here. The war had ended years ago, but the real victory was just beginning. Humanity had proven they could fight, but more importantly, they'd proven they could build. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, but it was also full of species that had spent millennia believing that cooperation was impossible. The Unity Project had shown them something different, that the barriers between species weren't walls, but bridges waiting to be built. As he watched the stars emerge in the darkening sky, Marcus realized that his promise to Velina had been about more than just their personal future. It had been about the future of everyone who looked up at those same stars and wondered what was possible. The answer, it turned out, was everything. In the years that followed, a Unity Project would grow into the Galactic Cooperative, a loose alliance of species dedicated to mutual benefit rather than mutual destruction. The technologies developed at Research Station Unity would revolutionize medicine, communications, transportation, and dozens of other fields. But more importantly, they would revolutionize the way species thought about each other. The Universal Empathy Enhancer would become standard equipment on all diplomatic missions. The translation systems would eliminate entire categories of misunderstanding, and the collaborative research methods would prove that innovation flourished. When barriers were removed rather than reinforced, Marcus never returned to Earth, but he often thought about the small farm on Titan's Edge where he'd first met Velina. That world had been on the very edge of human space, a place where dreams seemed impossible, and the future felt uncertain. Now, as he stood in the command center of humanity's greatest achievement, he realized that the edge was exactly where the future was built. It was where impossible things became inevitable, where barriers became bridges, and where promises made under alien stars could reshape the galaxy itself. The future they'd chosen wasn't just about humans or Zephyrians or any single species. It was about all of them, working together to build something greater than the sum of their parts. And it was beautiful.